just a heads up, this is going to be a very emotional video, so you'll hear my voice cracking throughout the entire thing, more than likely, and some tears will for sure be shed. This will be my second time dealing with it. So this is my second pregnancy, and then I also dealt with it in my first pregnancy. However, my postpartum depression with my first pregnancy wasn't as severe as it is this time. I definitely feel like there are multiple issues that go into it this time around, and it kind of exacerbated it. So I definitely it has been rough, to say the least. So let's get into it. I want to go ahead and kind of throw some basic facts out there regarding postpartum depression. So postpartum depression affects roughly 1 in 10 mothers. And if you've experienced it before in a previous pregnancy, you're at a higher likelihood and risk to experience it in your subsequent pregnancies. And you're also at a higher risk for it to be like worse or more severe with like a subsequent pregnancy. 50% of depressed women, so women who already are dealing with depression like outside of pregnancy, 50% of those women will experience postpartum depression. So I just also want to throw out some symptoms of postpartum depression. A lot of them are common symptoms that, or I guess common things that happen to women after pregnancy. It can be confused, postpartum depression can be confused a lot of the times with like baby blues. Baby blues usually last like a week or two, and then they'll go away, to whereas postpartum depression, those symptoms and those feelings, they kind of linger. And it can happen at any point during, I believe, the first 12 months of your postpartum period. So you have a year for it to happen. Sometimes it can happen right away within a couple of weeks of you giving birth. Other times it can happen months down the road. For me, this time around, like the first time in my first pregnancy, I wasn't feeling like myself at all. So I started to search, and then I came across postpartum depression because before I had my first son, I wasn't really aware of what it was to begin with. So that was, I started experiencing symptoms after my first pregnancy, I want to say within 2 months. So it was relatively early on after that. This time around though, I was fine. I was fine for months, and then it literally just came out of nowhere. I was about 7 months postpartum. So this time around, I have been dealing with this since August. I'm currently still dealing with it, and I'll get more into how it is for me now a little later. So some common symptoms for the postpartum depression could be, you know, experiencing depressed moods or severe mood swings, excessive crying. Now, do realize that your hormones are kind of like going up and down and regulating again after giving birth, which usually is what triggers postpartum depression. It could be like a hormonal imbalance a lot of the time. So you'll there's excessive crying. Difficulty bonding with your baby is what a lot of women experience when they're going through postpartum depression. Withdrawing from family and friends. So I had excessive crying. I didn't really experience difficulty bonding with either one of my sons. That was never an issue for me. Withdrawing from family and friends definitely was. Loss of appetite or eating much more than usual. So after my first son, my appetite wasn't really there, so I would go like the whole day without eating. I didn't really think anything of it. This time around, at first, I wasn't really eating, and then at a certain point, it picked up to where I was like always eating something. inability to sleep or sleeping too much, overwhelming fatigue or loss of energy. And for me, that's what it was. Like, I had zero motivation to do anything, just zero drive, always tired, always cranky, always grumpy. Reduced interest and pleasure in activities you used to enjoy, intense irritability or anger. And for me, my mood swings were crazy, so I definitely experienced that. Like, something could happen and then I would like automatically switch, and then I was just like extremely agitated or irritated, and I would get a little snappy. Hopelessness, which a lot of women experience when their postpartum depression is more on the severe side. Hopelessness, diminished ability to think clearly or concentrate, make decisions, restlessness. Some women experience hallucinations. Severe anxiety and panic attacks can be induced with the postpartum depression. A lot of women also experience postpartum anxiety. Thoughts of harming yourself or your baby, and then recurrent thoughts of death or suicide. So you may experience alternating highs and lows, frequent crying. Symptoms can range from mild to severe, and they may appear within days of delivery, as I was saying before, or it can come within those first 12 months. Symptoms can last for several weeks, up to a year as well. So usually postpartum depression is treated with, like, you do counseling that works for a lot of people who have like mild postpartum depression, or if it's a little worse or if it's severe, they can put you on medication, antidepressants, and then they'll couple that with the counseling or the therapy if needed. And that's usually effective in helping with the postpartum depression. That's usually helpful in helping with that. For me, the first time around, I would say it was mild. Like, I would get annoyed, or there were days to where I would just take my son and then like lock us in the bedroom. Wouldn't want to deal with anybody. I just wanted it to be like us two. Anytime anybody else would come around, I would get like irritated. My mood swings were crazy. I cried all the time. I was extremely emotional. Like, it didn't take anything for me to just burst out crying. It was literally just like that. This time around, I was okay, and then about roughly 7 months postpartum, so that was like August, I started to recognize signs that I had, and symptoms that I had with my first postpartum period. The increased irritability, the not being able to sleep, not getting enough sleep, the mood swings, the up and down, loss of interest in activities, kind of like distancing myself and pulling back from friends and family. I started to notice those signs, so I felt like, okay, it was coming back up. And the first time when I had postpartum depression, I was okay because it was mild, so I didn't need medication or anything like that. I was able to, when I started to feel that way, I was able to notice, like, when I was starting to hit a low, and I would be able to kind of like distract myself with something, or do something to where I had some like alone time, or just kind of take my mind off of it or whatever, and then I would be okay. And then whenever it happened again, I would just do that. This time around, though, that didn't help, and it just progressively got worse and worse and worse, and I just felt lower and lower and lower. So August, I started to notice the signs. September, it got a little worse, and then we hit October, and it got a little worse to where I was like snapping all the time, and then like kind of just having like outbursts, and I just wasn't happy. And then November is kind of where I told you guys that there would be tears. November is kind of where the tables really turned for me. There was a specific moment, and I'll never forget it, where I woke up and it was just bad. My triggers are stress, and when I get frustrated or overwhelmed, that's usually when I start to like kind of spiral and then go into feeling really low. So I woke up and I wasn't really in a good mood to begin with, and I was sitting on the couch, and the boys were just extremely busy that day. You know, they weren't following instructions. My toddler was a busybody. I just felt like he was like extra busy that day, and I had zero patience, so everything he did was triggering me or whatever. But I remember getting extremely frustrated, and I ended up sending them with their dad just so that I can like kind of get a breather, because he was upstairs working at the time. And I was on the couch, and I have never felt as low as I did in that moment. And I remember a thought quickly popping in my head. Just the thought of leaving. Just the thought of leaving my family. And you would never think that you would be in this position, or that you would deal with something as extreme as this until you're actually there. Oh, I remember bawling my eyes out for the rest of that day, and I didn't think of it anymore that day, but I felt weak and unworthy. And sort of like my children didn't deserve me, because I felt like that. Like, my children don't deserve a mother who's not healthy mentally, who's not healthy emotionally. And I never felt anything like that before. That was the first time that I ever felt that low in my life. I ended up speaking to my husband about it really, really late that night, because he had no idea that I was even feeling like that day. And then the next morning, I had called my OB, and I spoke to her, told her what was going on, and they had me come in ASAP. So I went into the doctor's office within the hour. Spoke to them about what was going on. At my doctor's office, I'm not sure how it is with, or like how anybody else's OB does it, but what they do, like when they screen you for postpartum depression, is they have you take a quiz on the computer to where you rate like your symptoms and how you're feeling and stuff like that. So it'll ask you like, have you been interested in activities or anything fun, or how's your sleeping, how's your eating, basically like going through those symptoms with you. And then how would you rate like your happiness, how would you rate how you're feeling. And then they'll ask you like if you've contemplated harming yourself or harming your child or whatever, or if you've contemplated suicide. So when I told the doctor, like I didn't plan on harming myself, like I wasn't experiencing it, like I didn't experience thoughts to where like, oh well, I'm gonna do like this specific thing to myself, or I'm gonna go out and do this. It was literally like a thought to where like maybe my family's better off without me. And honestly, like I can't explain why I would feel that way or whatever, but postpartum depression is serious. So they called and they immediately went and got a social worker who came in to talk to me. So I explained everything to her about how I was feeling and what had happened the previous day. And she was telling me, like, we're glad that you came in, because our first priority, obviously is helping you. We want you to be mentally healthy, and obviously your best self or whatever. So her first thing was that because it was so sudden, it really kind of came out of nowhere, and it wasn't just like I've been feeling like this for whatever amount of time. Because it was so sudden or whatever, they recommended that I actually go up the street, because my OB's office was like down the street from like the main hospital. So they recommended that I and what they wanted me to do was go up the street to like the main hospital to get a psychiatric evaluation by the psychiatrist up at the hospital. And at first I got nervous because I automatically assumed that if I went into the hospital saying that that I was having those type of thoughts, I automatically assumed that it was going to be like a psychological evaluation to where they hold you involuntarily for like the 72 hours. But when she had explained it to me, she goes, no, it's not like that. What they do, their process for doing it was that they basically evaluate you just to kind of see and determine how severe it is for you. And then after that, they'll decide if they'll allow you, or if they feel comfortable with you like going back home, or if they would prefer to like keep you for 72 hours to observe you. So I was really nervous at first because I didn't know what to expect. So I ended up speaking to my OB who also kind of backed her up and would have preferred for me to be seen, just to be on the safe side. So I called my husband, told him what was going on, and then I had the social worker like kind of drive with me up there, just so that she could kind of like hand me off to them, just so that they can be aware of what was going on. So when I got there, when I got to the hospital, it wasn't what I expected it to be. Like, I got to the hospital, and because the mention of just because the word suicide was mentioned, they took extra precautions with it. So I was there for a while waiting to be seen, because I had to go through the emergency room, which took hours. obviously, since it's the emergency room. But I had to strip down out of everything that I had on. I had to put on paper scrubs. I couldn't have my cell phone. I couldn't wear my my hijab due to my pin in it, and because my scarf or whatever, I guess they don't know what you're gonna do or whatever, because my scarf was like it could have been considered dangerous, since I guess it was like enough to like strangle yourself with. I'm gonna assume that that's what the protocol was. So I had to wear like a surgical cap and then another cap on that, just to make sure that I was covered properly. I had to wear paper scrubs, and then they took everything and then put that in inventory. And then I also had to have like a nurse with me 24/7. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything by myself. Somebody had to be with me 24/7. But when I was at the hospital, this was on a Friday, they didn't have a psychiatrist there at the time. So I spoke to another social worker. She basically went over the same thing that they went over at the doctor's office. And then she kind of like explained to me that, you know, since it only happened once and my symptoms still weren't severe like when I was there, that she was okay with getting me an emergency appointment at a community counseling center where I would see the actual psychiatrist. And that was like the next upcoming Tuesday. So it was like 3 days from then, 3 or 4 days from then. And they would then go over it more in depth with me and then provide me medication if needed be, and then I would do my counseling there. So I was able to go home that night, and then when I did my actual appointment with the psychiatrist, he had explained to me that since I experienced it with my first pregnancy, that I was more at risk to experience it with this pregnancy or whatever, which is the reason that I was going through it again. And because I had already had it, that my symptoms would be severe, or more severe or worse with subsequent pregnancies. So, you know, like I was just told to keep that in mind. And they prescribed me medication, which I'm currently taking now, which has definitely helped. And I'm also in counseling, so that has helped. That was mid-November, so it has been a month and change, like a month and a half since that all happened. And I am happy to say that I have not felt like that since then. I have been a lot better. Don't get me wrong, I still have my days to where I don't feel like myself, or, you know, I'll get sad or extremely overwhelmed and I'll like kind of retreat, do my own thing. However, I have not felt as worse or as low as that, and I'm praying that I never ever have to deal with that again. So I am on the medication, and I'll be on that for the foreseeable future. I just want to be healthy for myself first, mentally healthy for myself first, and then especially for my family, because they need me and I need them. For my family, I do love you guys, but I don't want to answer 1,000,001 text messages and calls about why I didn't come to you about it. It is what I chose to do or what I chose not to do, and I wasn't comfortable talking to anyone about it. However, I am comfortable talking about it now, and this is the way that I choose to talk about it. So I would appreciate it if everyone can respect that. Okay, I'm back. So I ended up having to stop the video just due to the fact that I was like extremely emotional when I spoke about it, and I was barely able to like regain my composure. So I just left it off for the rest of the night, but I am back to finish hitting on the topics that I wanted to touch on. So pretty much, yeah, I'll just summarize it up with, it's been a super long year. 2020 was a year for the books for sure. And if there's anything that I have learned, honestly, is to just don't put yourself on the back burner. Don't sacrifice self-care or your own self-needs for anyone else. You definitely come first. The only thing that will lead to that is like burnout, and that's something that I definitely experienced, and it contributed to my postpartum depression. I am just recently actually starting to like kind of put the pieces back together in regards to like my individual goals and needs and stuff or whatever, and that it definitely helps me to feel better when I can see myself moving towards those goals that I have for myself. So far I have been investing in myself. I'm back at work. I'm self-employed, so that helps a lot when it comes to like coping with it. When it comes to just family life and your children, your spouse, whether or not you're with someone or not, you want to make sure that you don't slack off too much on what you need for you and your self-care, and you know, the things that you need to literally survive. We can't pour from an empty cup, but a lot of the time, especially as new moms, we kind of just like throw ourselves on the back, which is natural. I mean, you're a mom, and I'll definitely do whatever I need. I'll sacrifice myself for my kids, and we see where I am. So you don't want to do that. You definitely want to prioritize yourself just as much as you prioritize everyone else. It can be you taking 20 minutes, an hour to read a few chapters of a book that you've been reading. It can be, you know, taking a bubble bath. It can be just taking, you know, a few minutes to self-reflect or meditate. It literally can be anything. Yeah, but I would say that it has affected me in a plethora of ways. Mentally, I feel like it's affected my thought process, and then physically, I have gained so much weight since the pandemic has started, and then my motivation due to the postpartum depression didn't help by any means, because I felt motivated to do not a damn thing. So I am currently actually sitting at the biggest that I have ever been outside of being pregnant with my 2 boys. I'm the weight that I was, you know, a day before giving birth with them, and I don't like it. Get myself back on track, you know, especially physically, and you know, taking better care of myself is definitely one of my main goals of 2021. We all can get through it. Make sure that you have a support system. I have my support system. You know, I have people around me who love me. I have my amazing husband. He's literally my #1 rock, my #1 support person at this point. He'll do anything for me, that man. He deserves everything. So I feel a lot better now, you know, now that I have been implementing my resources and, you know, getting everything back on track with the plan that I have for combating this thing. So we're gonna see. I really want by the end of this year to be able to look back and see the progress that I've made, and I want it to be like a complete 180, you know, just happy, successful, you know, checking off stuff on my bucket list, traveling, you know, feeling healthy, looking healthy, thriving. Those are my goals.